Very interesting thing to talk about post-COVID. Suddenly, during the summer, we thought, yes, it is post-COVID already, and suddenly we have what is called the second wave. Some were predicting already. As a recognized national and international thought leader in the use of contemporary extension models and approaches, so it means that we are going to talk about possible models on how things will turn out in a post-COVID world. Mr. Dr. John James from Australia about embracing digital engagement. Dr. James, can you hear us? Can you see us? And you're welcome.
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can see you, hear you from down under.
Excellent. It's lovely when technology works. So, Sveiki and G'day from Australia. I'm John James and I'm delighted to be talking with you about embracing digital engagement. I love the word embracing in the title there, that we're not just reluctantly or hesitantly accepting something, but we're willingly and enthusiastically embracing it. And when we talk about digital engagement, I'm talking about those technologies that allow the two-way interaction, such as social media and web conferencing. I sometimes abbreviate that to be Eextension, so electronic extension. So this is the use of electronic technologies to enhance our traditional extension approaches, such as our written material and physical meetings, so as to enable change. I stress the word there to enhance it, that I recommend a blended approach. So we're wanting to complement our existing traditional extension approaches with digital ones so that we have a more holistic approach with the way that we work. In today's presentation, I do encourage you to take some notes with a pen and pad, but I am very happy to share a PDF of today's presentation with you afterwards, and I'll display my email address at the end, and I'll happily send you the PDF afterwards if you request. And I do encourage you to keep your mobile phone handy because we're going to be using that shortly. In today's presentation, I've divided into 4 sections. So I'm going to set the scene about coronavirus, and then I'll move to something more positive and talking about the benefits of e-extension. And then I'll talk about some key success factors, and I'll finish with some future key challenges for us. So you may be wondering why you'd have someone from Australia talking with you today. And I now live down in Tasmania, in the bottom part of Australia. It's this little island that is often forgotten off our maps. So Australia has been using e-extension for maybe 15 or 20 years. So back in 2007, I had the pleasure of running a workshop for our extension network, APEN, and we did it in 4 different locations, but all online, and we talked all about blogs, wikis, and podcasts. The reason that it's so important for us in Australia is that we live in a very big country. So I have superimposed a map of Australia into the Northern Hemisphere, and Latvia is in the middle here. So you'll see that Australia is almost the same size as Europe. So the challenge for us is that Australia is 4,000 kilometres or 2,500 miles from east to west. This is a map of the top half of Australia, and each dot represents a cattle property. And so you can see that there's many hundreds of kilometres between some of those cattle properties. In a future role, when I was working with the government, I was leading an e-extension project where we were delivering online services to all of these beef producers in the top half of Australia. And we used blogs, websites and webinars. Some of our webinars were so popular that we had over 600 people register for them. So you can imagine that for us to physically visit some of those beef properties, it would involve a lot of driving for us and would take up a lot of time. So we still, of course, do that, but we complement it with our use of Eextension. So now, if you can get your phone out, please, and I'll do the same. So if you use your camera and take a photo of the QR code on your screen at the moment, and I'll do the same, you should get this little pop-up on the top of your phone, and if you tap that, it'll just take you to the website. But if that's not working for you, then you can just do a quick Google search for Poll EV. Just type in POLLEV into the Google search bar, and then you just tap on the Poll Everywhere icon there, and you may need to type in the name of the poll, which is MM Forum, but otherwise you could go to the website, and I'll just quickly pop the website in the chat box there in case that makes it easier for you. So, if this is now working for you, I'd love you to tap on your device to indicate where are you located. You know that I'm in Australia, so can you now show me where you're located, please? This is a step of faith to see whether the technology is working for us. Oh yes, excellent. So now I'm seeing lots of dots in the Northern Hemisphere there. Excellent. So I can see many of you are getting the idea. So it's great to have people from such a wide geographic area joining today's presentation. And of course, this wouldn't be possible if we were all gathering face to face, because I'm not sure that I would have been able to travel to Latvia for today. So thank you for sharing that with me. Now I have another poll just to share with you. Now, I'm curious, what level experience do you have delivering extension services? So do you have a small amount or a large amount? So this is interesting. Good to see the number of responses coming in now. Great. Okay, so we have a lot of newcomers to the profession, so welcome. And it's good to see a range of others who have other experiences. So this is good. So can you see that even though I'm in Australia, I can now better understand today's audience by using some e-technology. And just the last question, how much has coronavirus impacted your extension services? So a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is low and 10 is very high. Excellent. I see you're all getting the hang of Poll Everywhere now. Interesting, interesting. So I see there's a range of experiences there. And I'd say that overall, it's been a bad time for all of us. Okay, well, thank you very much for responding to those polls. That helps me better understand your background today. So let's move on and talk more about coronavirus. We know it's had a terrible impact all around the world. Already over 1 million people have unfortunately died. This has been a terrible episode for many of us. But as Winston Churchill said many years ago, never let a good crisis go to waste. And coronavirus has certainly been a crisis for all of us. So let's look at the health profession and how coronavirus has impacted them. As you may be aware, with e-health or telehealth, they've been trying to implement this for the last 10 or 15 years, but not very successfully. However, as soon as coronavirus came along, here's a headline from the New York Times back in April, and it says that telemedicine arrives in the UK and they had 10 years of change in 1 week. So you can see how the crisis caused significant change in people's behaviour towards using e-health. Now, if you've read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, he states that new habits form in about 2 months. And of course, coronavirus has already been around for much longer than 2 months. And I suspect by the time that it's moved on, after maybe the 3rd or 4th wave, we'll all be very familiar with using online technologies with our health professionals, and therefore I think also in our agricultural area as well. In today's presentation, I'm now going to move on to talk about the benefits of Eextension. Now, I've only got a short period of time, so I'm just going to focus on web conferencing for this section. So, as I mentioned before, in Australia, we've used Eextension because of the huge benefit that it gives us about connecting with our geographically dispersed clients, so that we had people from all, thousands of kilometres apart being able to join our webinars. For me, I really appreciate the life balance that using Eextension has brought into my life, so that I no longer need to travel as much, either by car or by telephone, which means I can spend more time at home with my family. A few years ago, I conducted a survey with some of my Eextension colleagues, and I asked them to what extent did web conferencing help them better engage with their clients. And this is about 7 years ago. And you'll see the majority agreed that it did help them to have greater engagement. It also helped them to be more innovative with their work. And finally, they indicated that they were able to be much more responsive with their clients. You can imagine that by using a web conference, they could almost immediately connect and talk with their farmers from many kilometres away, instead of having to wait until they could travel there the next time. So those are some key benefits about using Eextension. If you're really interested about that, that's one of the surveys that I used for my PhD, looking at the adoption and use of web technologies. And I'll include a link there, which will be in the PDF that I can send you afterwards. Okay, so let's move on and talk about some of the key success factors. So firstly, we need to be bold and we need to try different things. So just like Albert Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over again, yet expecting different results, we need to try different things and see how they work both for us and, perhaps more importantly, our clients, the farmers. So here's one suggestion of something that you might try differently, and I'm sure many of you are already using this. So it's the flipped learning approach, sometimes known as the flipped classroom. So in the traditional learning approach, in this middle column here, the new content is introduced by the teachers in the classroom, where they introduce the concepts to the students. Then the students go home and they have homework where they need to apply what they have learnt through the day. And often that's when they scratch their head and they don't quite understand what the teacher was talking about. And so then they stumble and are unsure of the correct answer. Whereas with the flipped learning approach, we flip it around so that the students introduced to the new content while they're at home. So they might read a chapter in a textbook, they might watch a short video or listen to a podcast. And then the next day when they're in the classroom, because they've got that foundation of knowledge, they can then apply their new learning while the teacher is there able to answer any questions. And of course, we can do this in the farming environment where we introduce the new material to the farmers before they come to our workshops. Now, I have, that's a very brief explanation. I've recorded a short video about this, and again, there will be a link to that in the presentation PDF afterwards. So folks, if you were asked to deliver a webinar like I am today, is this how you might feel? I hope not, but if it is, then I'm just going to share some tips with you now to help you be more relaxed about presenting webinars with your clients, the farmers. So firstly, you need to practice, practice, practice. So in the same way that the young girl on the bicycle, if she was learning to ride a bike for the first time, she needs to be practicing daily. If she was only practicing once every 4 or 5 weeks between getting on the bike, it will take her a very long time to master riding a bike. And so it is with using Eextension. We need to be practicing it each day. So if you're very keen to run webinars, I encourage you to do it, but do it daily. And if you don't have enough different farmer groups to be doing that with, then perhaps join with some of your colleagues and each take turns running webinars, because that's how we can build our competency and our confidence in using the new technology. If you're attending a webinar, you can do it through a computer, a tablet, or a smartphone. And similarly, when you're presenting, you can too. But most often, I recommend using a notebook computer. But the trouble with these is that they only have a very small microphone and webcam at the top. So they work, but not very well. So the first thing I'd suggest is that you get a headset like what I'm using today that plugs into your computer so that you don't have to worry about the batteries. And that will just help make the audio crisp for your audience to listen to. Please also consider buying a webcam. It really doesn't matter which one you'd go for. Anything is almost better than the one built into your computer. And also consider the lighting, so that we might not all work in a lovely lit office like this. It's more likely that we'll be like the lady in the top corner where it's a bit dark. So you need to have an additional light which you can attach behind your computer. And that's kind of what I'm doing today. And I have one of these Loom cubes. Some quick suggestions for online meetings. Of course, we need to have a clear purpose that's understood by our farmers. It's better to keep them short and sharp, that these days a 20-minute meeting is far more effective than a 1 hour long meeting. And where possible, keep them engaging and fun so that people enjoy coming along to your meetings. Okay, so let's move on and talk about some of the key challenges that we need to be aware of in the future. So for me, the number one challenge is the lack of infrastructure. So with the mobile phone towers and satellites, there just aren't enough. Even here in Australia, we have a lot of dead spots where we don't get reception. Fortunately, they are launching more satellites all the time and building more mobile towers, so hopefully that will improve. And of course, the other aspect is that many of our farmers don't yet have the technology, whether it be a smartphone or a computer, but of course, more and more of people are using them. But I encourage you to be using Eextension now so that you're reaching those who already have access to it. And that way we can be well prepared for when the majority then come online. Another challenge for us is that there is so much competition for our farmers' attention that it's as if there's a large group of people shouting at them using social media and other platforms. And so we need to identify ourselves as a trusted audience and have a trusted brand that they listen to. We also need to consider our language. So today, to me, this is still a face-to-face meeting. You can see my face, and in a normal web meeting, I'd be seeing all of your faces filling the screen. So it is still face-to-face, and the difference is that we have physical meetings in rooms, and we now have online meetings. So when I'm inviting farmers to join me for a web meeting, I emphasize the positive benefits to them when I'm inviting them. So I still say, hey, let's get together face to face, but let's not wait till the next time I can drive to your property. Let's use an online meeting. In fact, I could meet with you tomorrow or the next day if that's convenient. And I'm happy to show you how easy the technology is to use. So we set a positive message for the farmers. Now, a very important topic is that of trust, that an effective extension agent has trust with their farmers. And to do that online, of course, we're building on what we've already done in the past, and we need to be authentic. So sometimes I've seen my colleagues present at a web meeting, but suddenly they've put on a suit and a tie to then meet with their farmers, whereas they would not meet with them at on their farm dressed like that. So we still need to be ourselves, but in an online environment. I encourage you to consider having as much two-way conversation as you can so that you allow the farmers to speak as much, if not more, than you, so that they can feel heard. Of course, we need to be respectful of the farmer's background and their attitudes. And of course, we need to deliver value, and to do that consistently day in and day out. And it's by a combination of those that we can maintain trust even in an online environment. And finally, I'll just mention the aspect of ethics. And I'm sure many of you have watched The Social Dilemma, which was released on Netflix just last month. And in fact, if you go to your participants list, and can you raise your hand if you have watched that documentary on Netflix? So I found it very interesting, but also disconcerting. And it talks about the dark side of the use of technology, and that it not only connects us, but it can control us, and particularly the use of adverts in Facebook and some of the other social media platforms can manipulate our behaviour. So folks, it's been a very brief presentation, but I've set the scene talking about the horrible coronavirus situation. I talked about some of the benefits. There's many more than what I was able to cover in the time available. I mentioned some key success factors and also some key challenges, but in conclusion, I encourage you to be brave and try different things. And see what works, not only for yourself, but also your farmers. And while you're being brave, please also be compassionate, because so many people are hurting at the moment as a result of coronavirus. So let's be compassionate towards not only our farmers, but our colleagues as well, because so many of them are hurting at the moment. As mentioned earlier, there is a new milk module being created, and Saravan Raj and I have the pleasure of working on that at the moment. So thank you to all those who've already completed the survey, and you saw the link that Norma circulated before as well. So hopefully that'll come out in the next few months, and we'll have some ideas about the extension that we can share with you. So folks, thank you for listening in to my presentation today. If you'd like a PDF copy of the slides, if you just send me an email, john@enablersofchange.com.au, I'll happily send that to you. And by the way, I also create short podcasts and videos about extension. And so if you go to my website, and I guess you could scan the QR code in the top corner there now, and if you subscribe to my newsletter, I send updates out every 2 weeks. And by subscribing, you'll be one of the first to hear when a new episode is available. So thank you. It's been enjoyable interacting with you. Thank you for responding to the poll questions. And I'll look forward to chatting with you soon during the panel discussion.
Thank you, John. There goes a round of applause. Maybe you can't hear them, but I assume there are. And I would like to ask one very compassionate question we have got from our Zoom chat box. And the question is, thanks, John James, very inspiring and easy to accept for young farmers. But what is your experience to inspire the dominant majority of farmers, elder than 50, small-scale farmers in developing countries, for example?
Yes. Even in Australia, we have some challenges with the older people not using technology as much, but I'm very surprised at how well some of them are using it. So I'll talk from my own example here in Australia, that many retired farmers, when they go travelling, they use social media. So they're using Instagram and Facebook. They use it particularly during coronavirus to keep up with their grandchildren and their own children. And so I'm finding that more and more older people are actually using these new technologies. So I'm surprised at how well they are actually being accepted.
All right. So It's not always about the age or the size of the farm.
No, it's not. In fact, I find some of the younger people more challenged by the technology. And just a little story I'll tell you is that there was a group of farmers who wanted to join a webinar, and they found one of their neighbours who was comfortable using the technology. So they all went around to his house to join in the webinar. So there were a dozen or so people. So that's another easy way of doing it as well.
Speak to someone who knows.
Yes, it's all about having good friends.
And then one more question before the break, and after the break we will have the discussion panel, and also Dr. John James will take part in that. But the question is, what is the dynamics in Australia of who is using the commercial Eextension in terms of sectors, particular services, age groups? So what is the situation there now?
So last year, I'd say that the majority of our farmers were happily using Eextension, and now, particularly as a result of coronavirus, just about everyone is using it. There's very few people. In fact, there was only one industry that was mentioned to me recently that weren't adopting it as much as others, but our grains industry, sugarcane, even some of the more conservative cropping industries are now using it. So I think it's like telehealth, that maybe the time for Eextension has now come and people are becoming comfortable with it. And I'm sure that that's going to continue once they've seen the benefits of using the technologies.